Hi, this is Christopher Spera, and this is the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 97. One of my favorite here, hold my beer moments. Recorded live Sunday, July 7th, live from iTechGear Central. As I said, I'm Christopher Spera, the host here at iTechGear.org and the iTechGear Weekly, editor-in-chief, and all those wonderful good things. And joining it this week, back from the vacations, the former contributing writer over at Gear Diary and currently the host of the Linux Link Tech Show and living in the Retro Arcade podcast, Brother Joel McLaughlin. How are you, sir? Welcome back. Welcome back.
I'm doing quite well. We did a Chocolate World, the antique automobile museum that's in Hershey as well, which actually brings an interesting topic for my next Living in the Retro Arcade. And there was a mechanical motorcycle arcade machine.
Interesting.
So I'm going to talk about that. I've got a picture of it. I just need to do some research on it and talk about that and talk about some other things. But we'll be coming back from the hiatus here probably next Saturday.
Awesome.
Oh, good deal.
Awesome. Good stuff. Good stuff. Also joining us somewhere, getting himself somewhere, navigating the old and the new and the whole sort of garage sale kind of thing. Mr. Larry McJunkin, how are you, sir?
I'll tell you what, this was my second garage sale in my entire life. There will not be a third. Never. Actually, East Tennessee is, I don't know, you guys live a little bit north of me. I don't know what your weather's like, but East Tennessee is literally scorching hot. We've had 2 weeks of mid-90s with a heat index of 110, 112, and all the grass is brown. The powers that be are saying, don't water your grass, don't water your grass. Well, no kidding. It's
unless you want to eat it steamed, you know?
Yeah.
then,
right.
By all means.
Some parts of some counties are fining people if they see irrigation systems running for more than 30 minutes.
Nice.
So
nice. Nice.
It's hot. That's all I can say.
Yep. And last but certainly never, ever least, the former contributing editor over at Gear Diary and Pocket Now, and of course, editor over here at iTechGear.org, Mr. Chris Gavula. How are you, sir?
Not as scorching as Tennessee, apparently.
No.
We, of course, Chris, you and I kind of have similar weather,
so it's okay.
Well, there you go. But you and I have similar weather usually, and it's been hot and then cool, and then hot and then cool. Can't seem to quite make up its mind when it's going to be up here.
It is the whole McDLT.
It's the whole McDLT
and the cold side cold. So there you
go.
All
of it rather poorly packaged. But
yes,
that's neither here nor there.
But. Anyway.
And we're supposed to get the trailers of this hurricane eventually, late this week. So
hopefully that'll get us the water we need down here.
If it goes far enough east for you, if it goes far enough east, that's
I've got to give my mother a call later after the show tonight and see how she's doing. There's I forget which tropical storm is landing. Like
Beryl,
yeah. Right, vectoring right in at Corpus Christi, and she's going to get some of that crap. And
let me say, for any of our listeners who are in that path, please stay safe. Please, take caution. Whatever you need to do.
Absolutely, please do, because the weather is nothing to be playing with.
We all have friends and family in the area, so we all kind of have concerns as well.
Absolutely. I heard something kind of interesting not too long ago. You guys, honest to God, I don't know how else to give you a visual cue, but that's okay. Did you hear that Apple will announce a partnership with Google at the iPhone 16 event?
Will they now?
Oh yes. So Larry, what's going on with this one? Apparently there's new partnerships coming up. What's going on?
You know what? When I first read that, I was like everybody else, and I said, meh. However, if you think about it just a little bit longer than it takes you to say meh, I think it's actually a wise move that Apple's going to use multiple providers of AI models in addition to their own. Where everybody else, let's look at you, Microsoft. We have the best. We have Copilot. Don't go anywhere else. It's all about Copilot.
Sure.
And Google's not much different. But Apple's going to say, well, we have Apple Intelligence, but you know what? There may be some cases, folks, where you need something different or better or whatever. So we're going to let you work with 3 different kinds, at least 3 different kinds.
Right, because we'll have Apple
I think
Intelligence.
that's a good idea.
Absolutely, but we'll have Apple Intelligence. We'll have Google Gemini, right?
And you know what users are going to think is, hey, they're not stuffing it down my throat.
See, this is right. The idea here is, well, first of all, Apple and Google have been longtime partners with their iPhone devices anyway. All right. So for them, this is what I would consider to be no real big surprise, right? That they are partnering with Google for their AI as part of iOS 18 and the iPhone 16 series of devices that are going to be announced later this year, earlier this fall. So there's no surprise there with that, but I do like the fact that you're going to have a choice of either Apple Intelligence, or you can go ahead and log in with an OpenAI account and use OpenAI. And now apparently you can go ahead and log in with a Google Gemini account and use Google Gemini if you wish. So you've got a choice of at least, 3 different.
Well, my question is going to be this though, and that may be the way they're approaching. But again, this hasn't happened yet. This is theoretically announced for the iPhone 16 event, and I think it's because they weren't ready to talk about it at WWDC like they were the OpenAI partnership.
Sure.
So we don't really know what this partnership is going to look like when it comes down. It could just be they're going to leverage certain services for certain functions.
It could
rather than kind of an open plugging kind of thing. We don't quite know for sure how this is going to pan out.
It could be, but one of the things that they did announce was that you can use Apple Intelligence for your AI use, or you could log in and use OpenAI. I'm assuming
they did talk about that. You're right, and so
they did
your
make those 2 things.
not,
so I'm going to assume, building on that, I'm going to assume, and this may be a here hold my beer moment, right? But this could be another choice where you could go ahead and use one, the other, or the other, right?
But regardless of where they're going and which way they're going to approach this, what's interesting is they were kind of public about this. Okay, Meta, thanks, but no thanks. They were pretty public about that little piece of it, which I think is an interesting little snub.
Well,
to say the least,
given the way that if you remember from last week's discussion, we talked about how you the only way that you can opt out of Meta's AI training, right, is to have had a third party dialogue
contact you
to go ahead and say, hey, we're using your information as part of this third party effort.
You can't categorically do it.
No, you can't categorically do it. And Apple, with all of their privacy, hey, we're very private. We're not going to use your information for anything untoward, or we're not gonna just take it without asking you first, keeping your information private. That may be one of the reasons why.
But you know what? I got
they gave Meta the big salute.
But they could have just said nothing.
Question maybe one of you guys can answer. And I've tried this, so this is why it's a real question. So if you take Gemini and Copilot, just the 2 of those, and you say, and OpenAI, and you say, paint me a picture of a blue dog that looks sad, you're going to get pretty much the same damn picture. I've tried it.
Okay.
So what are they trying to do? I mean, what's going to differentiate Apple Intelligence from Gemini from AI?
I don't think the graphic engines are necessarily separate. I think that gets farmed out to some other service.
I think you're right.
So regardless of whose AI you're using.
I think you're right there.
Maybe it's the verbiage. Maybe I need to try that with a specific
there was
phrase.
Remember earlier on,
I think you need to try with something that's going to return data as opposed to to a graphical picture, right?
Okay. I'll
All
try
right.
it. I will. I'll
All
try
right.
it.
If you were to go
Yeah.
ahead and ask each of those three things the same task-based question, would you get the same result? All right. Or would you get something that was different, and how different would it be? Right. So I don't know, but interestingly enough, you asked Larry, how is it going to be different from one to the other to the other? I think largely, I think they're all probably, I don't think they're all using the same large language model, but it's going to have to be pretty doggone close. All right.
But keep in mind, the graphic model is not the same as the large
I
language
agree.
model, and it's not necessarily a part of that.
But they're probably pulling all half of
I
that.
agree.
They're pulling from Google Images anyway. So.
Well,
Possibly.
my point is,
Right.
though, the large language model, I don't know how many of these are truly unique and truly out there. All right.
True.
Don't know. All right. I think a lot of what's going to differentiate the services, though, is going to be where the request is processed, all right, and how your data is handled. All right.
Yeah, I would agree.
All right.
Mhm.
I know that Apple's going to do a lot of the processing locally based on what they have on the device and how they work the device, only going out with the specifics as needed and then pulling that information back in. Whereas I think the others just kind of farm it out and then pull it back. All right.
Very possible.
It's going to be interesting.
And I
think we have a lot of questions that people are going to come up with here. I mean,
They
they're
are.
just going to evolve. I do know that I actually, I mean, I'm going to admit it. I mean, I'm hard pressed for time, and I have to write several newsletters a month, and I do use AI a lot. What I do is I use AI to give me the basis for the newsletter. Then I kind of doctor it up with my own stuff.
Yep.
And I do find that between OpenAI or ChatGPT and Gemini, there's a huge difference in the verbiage that comes back. Both are valid. And Copilot, strangely enough, I put Copilot to the test this week. I wrote my newsletter was on how it's all about in Copilot being integrated into Windows 11 and how we can't get away from it, et cetera, et cetera. And I did everything but say they're jamming it down our throat. But I found it interesting that the worst text that came back from my newsletter was from Copilot.
Well, what I'm wondering though, so how did that work? Since Copilot essentially is using ChatGPT and is using OpenAI's
I don't
product.
know, but the words were different.
How did you not get the same result? Yeah, you got to wonder what they're doing, right? You got to wonder what they're doing on top of it.
That's what I'm starting to wonder is where they're pulling this crap from.
See, and I think that's very
somewhere below my chair, I think.
See, this is what's going to differentiate, I think these systems completely is the algorithms that are employed. All right. And the way that you as the end user can quote unquote tune that voice, if you can tune it at all. All right. Don't know that you can, don't know that you will be able to. And also don't necessarily know to what degree you're going to be able to do that. But I'm hoping.
Well, and what is the wrapper?
Over that.
What's the wrapper around it actually doing? If it's offering any value add, as Larry said, he got a different result. I would have thought he would have got the same result you would have gotten from ChatGPT when you use.
I would hope that there would be something differentiating these systems. I would hope
Microsoft hasn't been very clear about exactly what they've done and what that relationship is. They're not real transparent about that. So
no, but I would hope that there would
except that everyone's gonna have it. That's the only thing they've ever said.
Yeah, everyone's gonna have it. And by the way, you'll pay us for it,
right?
At some point,
right.
And you'll enjoy paying us.
And you'll enjoy paying us.
And then speaking of paying for it, then there's Amazon's too, right? That it's going to cost you approximately $10 a month.
And Google.
Those rumors are true, right?
Yeah, and Google.
So there's a lot that I would hope that there would be something tangible that you as a user would be able to identify that would allow you to hang your hat on a specific brand and say, I like Pepsi because I like, this, or I like Coke because I like this. Same kind of thing. I like this version because of.
Well, it's going to be, Chris, it's going to be whatever response I get when I say, here, hold my beer.
Thank you.
That's going to dictate which one I go with.
Well, I get that. But you know what? We have dissed on AI really hard for a better part of 18 months.
And rightfully so.
In my heart of hearts, I really hope someday we all can use this stuff to our benefit. I mean, I really do.
Yeah, we're still missing the bumpers, Larry. I think everybody got rid of their teams that were doing that. So I'm still concerned,
and you should be, because those bumpers aren't really there.
There aren't any. Right?
There aren't.
They're minimal. Really they're minimal at best, right?
We've been calling for those for at least the last year. So, this team.
And it's gonna get. I mean, I don't want this to get political, but it's going to get real bad with AI this season with politics.
So?
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, it already is. I mean, I see like maybe not necessarily AI generated, but I've seen the thing I've seen the most common is you'll see a in the Facebook suggested for you things like people you don't follow, you don't care about post, but Facebook thinks, oh, you might be interested in this. Well, 9 times out of 10, if you look at the story that it put in your feed, it's BS. All right, like one of them is what's her face that from University of Pennsylvania, Leah, face? Yeah, the transsexual swimmer. Yeah,
Leah Thomas. Yeah,
Leah Thomas. Yeah. Oh, they took all of her medals away. They didn't do any such thing.
But you can argue that that's been true again, no matter what story you look at. If some idiot says
AI
it gets repeated, then guess what? The AI picks it up and it gets spread everywhere even further. It's completely crazy, and that's what we mean about bumpers.
Lack of a bumper right there.
And the challenge will be, again, don't care what side of anything anybody falls on. The challenge will be it needs to be moderated and censored, but who's going to do it, and how do you get it done in a fair way? And that's a challenge. That's a problem. I don't have an answer for that question. But without it, this is going to keep happening.
Very, very true.
That simple.
And do you know what may not make a bit of difference if you have a Intel based Mac? With all that, with
any of this,
trying to go to Max Sequoia, right?
Trying to go to Max Sequoia and looking for
Chris?
those AI features that are going to be there. Because I'll tell you,
is that really a surprise?
Nope.
Yes and no. Yes and no. All right. And I say yes. All right. No, let me start from the other side. I say no, because if you don't have any kind of a chip that has a neural engine built in as part of the hardware,
or a graphics card that can fake that,
or a graphics card that can fake it,
you can't do it.
You aren't going to be able to run this stuff, right? And effectively, those Intel based Macs that are out there, those that are already on the market, that are already running a version of Mac OS, aren't going to and will be compatible with Sequoia, are not going to get the following features. All right. The big one being Apple Intelligence. All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's expected.
You aren't going to get the Apple AI. You aren't going to get all of the benefits that come with that, including live audio transcription, which will rely heavily on AI. All right. In order to be able to summarize all of those meeting notes and keep track of all of the players and who's in your
which you're able to do on your mobile devices today in a lot of ways, and it's going to be nice. It's going to be interesting to see that on a desktop if it can do it. But you're right, without that neural processor, which most mobile devices have
The
something
Intels
like
just don't have it built into
they don't have it.
into the architecture at all.
Nope.
All right. And
Not
the
at
only
all.
way to get something faked is if you have I would say pretty heavy duty graphics card that might be able to go ahead and
But
fake
again,
the
the software
processor that it
would have
has.
to be, but the software would have to be written to know to use the graphics card instead, which
Correct.
requires additional drivers and additional
Correct.
APIs and things like that.
Which ain't gonna
that
happen
have
on
to
a
be done.
Mac.
Right.
It ain't going to happen. Certainly not
No.
anytime soon, because not for a platform that they're basically slowly deprecating. So,
Right.
who's going to put that energy into it?
Right. And interestingly enough, and thankfully, and I mean, because there's always something that doesn't quite make the cut from year to year to year to year.
True.
Or those legacy-based machines, right? Thankfully, this isn't a huge leap this time around. All right. This is everything to do with the type of processor. And it's a different platform completely. So if you've got an Apple Silicon Mac, you're likely good to go, regardless of what flavor of Silicon Mac you've got, whether you've got an M1 based architecture or you've got the latest M3s or probably the upcoming M4s. You're gonna be good to go regardless, because all of those have neural engines built into.
I think as AI, quote unquote, and I'm going to use that term broadly, like we do, as that progresses, and we see that more in our platforms, you're going to get to a point where the demands of AI are going to start to force the dropping off of the earlier low end versions of those, because they didn't have as big a neural engines going on as the newer ones do. So you're going to see that happen. But for now,
of course you will. Of course
for
you
now,
will.
it's very consistent because it's all still in its infancy. So we're still good for a while.
Right. We're still good for now. As long as you've got an Apple Silicon based Mac, you should be good to go, at least for Sequoia. Yes, you will see.
For Sequoia, yep.
Right. You will see as we progress further and we go from year to year to year, you will see M1s start to fall off in terms of support, or features be withheld from those earlier M1, M2 based Macs, right? However, for this year, not so much. You've got things related to AI, which is Apple Intelligence specifically, and then live audio transcription, which will rely on the AI in order to be able to make it. But other than that, it's not that bad. All right. You're going to get everything else.
It's a good thing.
Which is a good thing. All right. So your 2020 and later MacBook Airs, your 2018 and later MacBook Pros, your 2019 iMacs, 2018 and later Mac Minis, 2017 iMac Pros and later, your 2019 Mac Pros and later, and your Mac Studio 2022 and later should all be good to go as far as Sequoia is concerned. So as long as the ones that you've got there are going to be running an M1 or later, you're going to get the full boat. Otherwise, it's just the AI features that are out. So there you go.
Well, there we go.
Yeah. The last thing that I really want to talk about in our Apple segment is something that I think Apple only moved forward simply because Epic sort of stamped their foot, and he's not, Mom, he's touching me, right? They're throwing a fit over it. Apple is finally greenlighting the Epic Game Store app in the EU. All right.
Yeah.
In what most folks are calling a rapid reversal. So, Chris, what's going on with this?
Well, it's interesting because, first of all, there's a couple of things here. This happened on Friday, that this reversal occurred, and Epic was just screaming like the day before. So it hasn't been a long process, despite what Epic says. And Apple has said all along that Epic wasn't complying with certain requirements. And Epic kept saying, yeah, you're just stalling. And it was kind of a stupid set of arguments that they were making. But the point was, Apple finally said, well, you know what? The only thing left is some buttons that you used of ours that you shouldn't have used. And we want you to redo them, but we're going to let it go ahead for now with the promise that you're going to go ahead and change that. What's interesting about all of this is Epic is still not actually ready to launch their store for probably the next few months. So all this squawking is almost for nothing because they're not ready to launch. So it's kind of funny to read. It's like, really?
See, all this is some project or project and or product manager over at Epic screaming and yelling because they can't get to their freaking milestone on their Gantt chart.
Pretty much.
All right, which I have a big enough problem as it is with Epic and this whole freaking subject. The only reason, I mean, they're making literally with what they before the whole DMA and this whole court ruling that Apple got themselves into in order to have a separate store.
Sure.
Epic was making billions of dollars already a year. All right. They were making ungodly, stupid money.
It was a lot of money.
It was a lot of cash. And basically what they're pissing over is the 15%, well, for them 30%, because they're making more than $1 million a year. Anybody that doesn't make at least $1 million a year pays 15% to Apple. All right. Anybody making over $1 million a year, and there aren't a lot of them, but those that are
Quite a few
are making a lot of money, right? There are some, a goodly amount, but there's more below the $1 million line than above.
True enough.
Is my point. But they're still making good money. Even when they pay 30%, they're still making a boatload of cash. And that's all that this is stemming from. They're busy throwing a hissy fit because I want my. Well, for crying out loud, you're on one of the biggest platforms in the entire freaking world, aside from all of your PC stuff that you make on your own that has absolutely nothing to do with Apple. All right, that you make out of your own store anyway, which I'm certain is in the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars there as well. How greedy can you get?
Well, it's Seriously, what it is. And
how greedy can you get?
They strong-armed the EU into
they did
pushing this act in place. Them and others that really had a vested interest in making it happen, had made it happen, for good or bad. And now they're trying to leverage it as best they can. That's what they're doing. So, there you go.
So there you go. What really surprises me, though, is even after Apple said, okay, fine, you whiny little,
and they still are whining,
here you go. We'll let it pass but you got to promise to change the buttons. All right. What I really want to know is Epic really going to change the buttons, or are they going to push that as far as they can?
Who knows?
And will Apple retaliate and say, you know what? We conditionally approved you to go ahead and get into the store, provided that you change the button. You didn't change the button, so you're out.
And by the way, for a project you're not even ready to execute on it anyway.
Thank you.
So thanks, guys, for wasting everyone's time.
Yeah. Again.
Honestly, I wish that Fortnite would go away entirely, because I think it's an awful game. I played it. But
isn't it kind of like past its prime anyway in a lot of ways already?
I would think.
That's my opinion. But
so let's face it. I mean, that's a particular game that's based on the Unreal Engine, isn't it? Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Unreal Tournament is something that really came about and was very, very popular more than about 25 years ago, if not more.
Was it that long ago? I don't know.
Right? But all right. And Unreal Tournament was a decent game. All right.
Yeah. I don't know. I'm not into these first person shooters, so they don't really do much for me, but whatever.
My point is, I can understand why some people have, Joel's opinion where, look, isn't it past its prime? Can't we move on? Can't we find something else?
That's what I was saying too.
Unfortunately, it's still a big seller. People are still playing it. People still want to play Unreal Tournament, but you can't.
They're still playing Minecraft, or they're still playing a lot of these games that have been around
Absolutely.
for a long time.
So,
it's true.
It's true. If it ain't broke, don't fix it, right?
Yeah.
If it's making money, why not? What the hell?
Okay.
All right. So I want to go ahead and move us to our mobile Linux segment, and there are a few stories here.
There are.
Right. I kind of tinkered with the title on this next one a little bit because I couldn't help myself. I read
You had
to.
You just couldn't let it go.
Well,
could you?
you know, for us, it's a one.
I
For
do
you and
know.
me, it's
I
a
know how
wonderful
you
life.
are.
Is a decent sort of thing. There was a title
Yes.
out there that, you know, for every post to Instagram, a light bulb you know, turns on and never goes out. My thought on this: well, for every Instagram post, a light bulb gets its wings. So there you go. But Chris, what's going on with this particular?
Well, I came across this story this week, and I found it kind of interesting, in the sense that we kind of intuitively know that this would be true, but we don't
Right.
think about this. And what this means is, anytime you do anything, quite frankly, on the internet, especially when
Right.
you post and something's still left up there,
Right.
regardless of whether it's Instagram, they used Instagram as their example, but regardless of whether it's Instagram, regardless of whether it's an email that you sent or anything that you post up there,
Mhm.
it's there for. We talk about how it's there forever and those things come back in archives, but what we don't talk about is it costs energy to keep that stuff alive and keep it refreshed and keep it running and keep it
Sure.
available or whatever
Sure.
it might be. Even when it's archived, it costs money.
Everything. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the point is, not only does it cost money, it costs energy, and the carbon footprint of these things gets uglier every year. And if you post, for example, a picture, whether you post it to Facebook, whether you post it to Instagram or TikTok or wherever you're posting your video or your picture, and that thing gets repeated by 10 people who repeat it by 10 people who repeat it by 10 people,
And they
all
tell
of
two
that takes
friends
up
and so
storage.
on and so on.
All of that takes up storage, and all of that takes up energy, and it gets bigger and bigger. And what they're having a hard time getting their heads around is exactly what does that carbon footprint look like, and what's that gonna look like going forward. And it's gotten to the point where the estimates are that it's almost as bad as some other industries that are out there now, if not worse in some cases. So it's something to be thinking about, because we don't think about it. It's something that happens very quietly in the background, and we don't really think about that.
Well,
This has an impact.
think about just how many videos and email jokes and
Exactly.
things we get individually. Multiply that by
But
hundreds of millions.
absolutely,
You're
truly.
right. You're right.
But broadly, we always kind of had in our heads, well, it's electronic. There's no paper, so there's no cost to doing this, or there's no effect of doing this.
Mhm.
But the reality is, there is. We just don't see it because
Right.
it's not in our backyard. We don't see
Right.
it, and
Right.
and
And guess who's paying
eventually,
for it?
well, but eventually this is going to be a thing, a much bigger
Sure.
issue, and
Sure.
we need to start thinking about it. And that's what this article was kind of putting the thought in your head. And they are having a terrible time calculating really what it does mean. What's the real impact? But it's out there.
Well,
It's the
I
same
think
thing-
it's a figure that is going to be difficult to calculate and get
Yeah,
to a final number.
but-
All right,
but it's
because
the
you
same
don't
thing-
know
Right.
you don't know the entire impact. You don't
But
have.
it's the same thing as when you talk about EVs. We think, oh, the carbon footprint on an EV is lower. It's not. But the reality is, we're separated a layer from it. So we all think
Well,
it is, because
well,
we're
you've all
separated a layer from
speaking
the
speaking of
realities.
funny pictures that are out there. You've all seen the picture of the gas or diesel generator sitting next to the superchargers powering the superchargers, right?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
sure.
Right.
So you know, so you're not.
All that has
To
to
be
come
very
from
very
somewhere.
honest, you're not reducing your carbon footprint.
No.
You're not
Well,
saving
and
a tree.
and the tires wear more, and they're more wear and tear because they're heavier on the roads. On and on it
You're
goes. But the
just
point is,
changing it.
we're
Yeah.
not good at calculating what that kind of stuff means yet, because we're removed a layer, we're extracted a layer from the whole
Well-
thing. And this is the same kind of thing. We need to start thinking about this and try to figure out what this really means, because eventually it's going to be a big problem, or could
Right.
be.
So this is begging the question, right? To help save the planet, should we use less data? Given how
That's
much
what
of a
they
modern
kinda
life
talk
depends
about.
on megabytes and teraflops, is this going to be something that could be a huge factor in the coming AI age, right?
Maybe.
When you need more computing power to do the things that you will do tomorrow, which were sort of the similar that you were doing on your own yesterday and the day before, with all this additional computing power. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? And how do you reconcile all of this?
Yep.
Right.
Well, it's also it's going to use more power on the servers. AI will use more power on the server side than we even realize,
Well,
because it's
Well,
not just about power. It's about power, all the resources behind it. You know what kind of S3 buckets you're using for storage. If you're using
absolutely true.
AWS and all those different things are going to become
But
important to
this
cost
is
wise.
why moving our computers to ARM and things like that are important, because
Yes.
they all suck less energy than the current kind of
in the current platforms
approaches.
that we're used to,
And
right?
one last kind of important thing, what they're estimating right now is that data centers and data transmission networks are taking up to 1.5% of our global electricity usage today. That's just today,
Yep.
and it's growing fast.
Not
So
just that, real estate too, because
real estate,
The Google data center that they built on some old farmland not far from my church is huge.
well,
I mean,
and let's
I've
not even talk
never
about the
seen a
carbon,
facility that large.
but we don't
You
even
know,
add in the carbon footprint of building that structure, of the
exactly.
equipment. It adds up. It all adds up, and it's gonna get more significant. But we need to figure out what that looks like.
Have you guys
Yeah.
been to or seen pictures of the Apple data center near Charlotte, North Carolina?
No,
Google it.
not
No,
yet.
I've heard of it. I
It's
knew that it was out
unbelievable.
there.
It's literally, you cannot see the end of it. It's that big. It's just,
Wow.
I've never seen anything. I used to think Amazon distribution centers were large, but
Oh, and they are, yeah.
And they are.
nothing
And
like
this,
this.
well, and this is also why maybe cloud computing ain't such a good idea. Because now basically it's making Amazon, Google, Microsoft, and now Apple have to have data centers that are just unreal size wise. And is that really better than multiple data centers all over the country?
Well, the
You know?
question is, I know that in some cases, I know we've certainly heard and read that they're trying to sort of mitigate the damage using solar and other kind of resources. Okay, but what does that really look like right now? I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
and Facebook itself has its own hardware platform too that runs all their
True.
stuff, and it's not off
Agreed.
the shelf, and it all runs a lot of data centers are also switching from AC power into DC power. They still use AC power because something's got to run the DC.
Right.
But
Just a conversion.
and there's loss in that conversion, which
And it's lost in the
generates heat.
conversion.
Yep. Anytime you make that transition from AC to DC or DC to AC, there are losses, and this all goes back to my electronics degree. And these are not insignificant.
And voltage changes. When you're going, all that. There's effects to all of that.
Right.
So we have to think about that, and that's the whole point of this article, is to sort of get people to start thinking about those things more than they had been up to this point.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of an interesting thing. So I brought it up for this week.
And glad that you did. It's something that we need to think about. In light of all of that, and with the AI related issues or features that are coming in this year's both Apple as well as Microsoft operating systems, it looks like OpenAI got hit by two big security issues recently. Larry, what's going on with that?
Well, they got hit with two big security.
Thank you.
Thank
you. I'm here all week.
The word "duh" comes to mind.
I did a little digging past the surface level on this one. I just wanted to see something, and it also is, to me, it's part of a bigger story. I'll make that point when I finish. OpenAI is again making headlines, as we know, double dose of security concerns, and first one centers on their Mac app that they just released for ChatGPT. I downloaded that app. I've used it. I actually like it. It's a lot easier to do this on my desktop than to fire up Safari and go play with it up there. And earlier this week, however, a Swift developer dug into the Mac ChatGPT app and he found that it was storing user conversations locally in plain text rather than encrypting them.
Was he originally hired at Microsoft? I just want to know.
Well, follow me for just a minute here. So this app is only available from OpenAI's website. It's not available on the App Store, which means it does not have to follow Apple's sandboxing requirements. And the bottom line here is OpenAI fessed up. They say quickly released an update to the app, and they added the encryption to locally stored chats. To me, this is, again, part of a bigger story. Say what you want to about apps not being properly vetted on the App Store, and point fingers all you freaking want about Apple not allowing apps to be sideloaded. Boys and girls, this is what you get when you take away sandbox bumpers.
Yeah,
I'm okay with vetted apps. They may not be as good. They don't do quite the cool stuff that the sideloaded app might do. I don't give a damn. I'm safer. Sorry, I am.
Well,
but Larry, this also goes back to the whole industry not having bumpers of any kind yet.
Oh yeah,
at this
the
point.
whole thing.
You know, there's no
Apple can't fix it all.
Stuff.
Apple's just trying to fix it with sandboxing. They can't fix it all.
Well, sandboxing doesn't fit. Sandboxing doesn't fix it all, and it all depends on if you trust Apple in the first place.
Well,
which I don't.
Yeah, I do.
Understood there, and you're right. All right, sandboxing doesn't fix everything, but
it helps.
the point is, right, what are we going to do as far as security and privacy is concerned from a software development perspective? All right.
Yeah, but from a developer's perspective, this would have never happened if the app had been downloaded from the App Store. No way.
Yes, because there would have been the requirement for the sandboxing. All right.
It would
implode within its own gated memory area on your machine, and it wouldn't pollute anywhere else. I get that. All right. I get that. I understand that. But
poop in your own garden. There you go.
Thank you. Don't poop where you eat. Poop in your own garden. Thank you.
Well, it really goes beyond that, though, because
it does.
Who cares about? I mean, well, I'm not saying you shouldn't care about the local app itself. What about the server side?
You know,
there you go. I mean,
let me just say this. All right, and I'm not going to. From a consumer perspective, all right, you want apps that provide features and functionality that are going to be competitive in the market, but provide you with those features and functions that you want and need, but also keep your data safe. The problem that we have, and I'm going to say I'm a 30+ year veteran in quality and SDLC, software development lifecycle. All right. And I've been doing this for a very, very long time. Programmers are lazy. It's why I have a job. It's why I have a job. Developers are lazy, or they're being driven and pushed by management or project and product managers that want to get to market first.
Well, keep in mind, engineers and programmers are basically, their goal is to do things as quickly and efficiently as possible. I don't know it's lazy, but it's definitely about efficiency and getting it done. It done quickly.
More often than not, it's about getting to market first, or getting to market as quickly.
I don't know if that's purely about laziness, but it's certainly about
the problem. The problem that you bump into is, and why I say laziness, all right, is because you've got those folks that are being driven and they're being pushed hard, so they cut corners. All right. They make their plans knowing that they make their development plans, they make their engineering plans, their designs, knowing that the quote unquote better or right way would be to do these extra things, but they don't do that because you
can't sell it upstairs.
They think that it's not going to float well upstairs, that it's not going to,
usually doesn't.
Those plans aren't going to be accepted or permitted in terms of development time and testing time required to make certain that they move. Or if they do, we're just going to go ahead and take away from the testing time because development took us long. And I'm sorry, QA guy, you thought you had 3 months. Well, now you've got 2 weeks to test this whole big thing.
Congratulations.
And thank you. James. Yes. All right. But that's just the way that it goes. So they got hit by these security issues. All right. AI is going to be one of the biggest features and things. And I'm sorry, I believe they said it probably, I want to say 4 to 6 weeks ago. All right. But OpenAI doesn't necessarily understand how their large language model does what it does. If they don't know, all right, and some of you guys are sitting here nodding your heads. All right. If they don't know how it does what it does, how the hell am I, as a potential consumer or even the QA guy, supposed to have a level of confidence that it's done the right way or done in a way that doesn't open up security related holes or issues?
Well,
or
there's some clear
All right.
things you can do. For example, you cannot
Test.
store
You
your
could
stuff
test.
locally
You could
in,
give
in
the time to
unencrypted
test.
text.
But
you can do things like, oh, don't store it locally unencrypted. Hello. That's an obvious.
Well, there
Right.
are things that are obvious. The problem is, and again, all right, it takes time to wrap that data in a encrypted wrapper or to encrypt that data and store it in such a way that it cannot be decrypted easily, and B, isn't someplace that it isn't supposed to be. All right. Just for the sake of either ease of programming or quicker programming, or I don't have time to do it the right way programming. I don't care. All right. A lot of times this shit happens because developers don't dot the I's and cross the T's because they're either being pushed or they're purposefully cutting corners. All right. I've got 30 years. I've got 30 years in test management that said that to go up against anybody else's debate on this particular issue. I've been there. I've done that. I've run the teams. I've written the tests and the plans and the strategies. I've executed all of that stuff over the years. I know. It's not my first rodeo. And this is why these things anger me so. How and why did somebody allow this to get through? Either a design review or a requirement review or some level of code review before it even gets to test.
See, I can't. I'm not going to blame the programmers here. I cannot blame the programmers because I have coded. And when you code, I don't care if you're doing it for
I'm an
yourself.
ex-developer myself.
Right. When you code, you I don't care whether you do it for somebody else or for yourself. You spend way too many hours. You get sleepy. You get clumsy. You get lazy or whatever. You just get tired. It's the person above them that should have QA'd the darn thing before it left the shop. It just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Like you said, Chris, upstairs.
I don't. A lot of the teams that I have worked with over the years have always had their test time reduced drastically. I usually plan, we say, hey, it's going to take this long. It's this deep, it's this wide.
But it costs too much money, so they
and
cut it.
I got to tell you, as an engineer, I'm not a programmer, I'm an engineer. And I can tell you that my projects historically have had those problems, and those problems have come down from the top with management saying, you got to get this done faster or you got to get it done less expensively. And so we have to cut corners. We have to cut corners to reduce, to meet their unrealistic requirement. But in doing so, my job is to say, okay, I'll cut this corner, but this is the risk you're going to take if I do that.
And that's basically what my job has been. You're going to, if fine, you can't give me.
You can choose to do that, but
you need it in 2, 3, 4, however many less you need. You're giving me, fine. This is what you're going to end up with. These are the risks that you may have to accept or acknowledge.
Exactly, and as long as you present that's all you can do. Sometimes,
because let's face it, kids, release is not a QA decision; it's a management decision.
It may occasionally be the end result of the programmer, quote unquote, being lazy. But I think more often than not,
not lazy. It just he's tired.
I think that no, that's not what I'm saying. Let me finish the thought there, because really what I'm saying is normally that's not the driver. The driver actually is, I think it comes down from the top more than anything. And they're
Well,
just trying to
that's,
meet requirements. put in
I
front of
agree
them.
with you. I agree 100%. How many
yeah.
emails have you gotten that said, okay,
yeah.
team, new deadline?
Right.
And it's like, it's a week sooner.
I've gotten plenty of them. So
Yeah.
it happens.
So have
It
I.
happens.
So have I, and it's
It
all
definitely
all because
happens.
of cut corners.
And,
All
and
right.
I
Always
think there's
cut corners.
another aspect of all this that we're not thinking about, and that's
Well,
public opinion. You know, software vulnerabilities can be patched, but it's always after the fact.
Mhm.
And then the public looks at the data breach or whatever from LastPass or wherever, and you can't fix their opinion of what happened, and you lose money from that.
Mhm.
You do. You do.
Mhm.
It absolutely
Right.
happens all the
And
time.
The concern that I have though with OpenAI and any other of these larger artificial intelligence or large language model development efforts, these things are designed to be used to in business or in education to assist with the speedy development of deliverables. All right, productivity based deliverables, reports, presentations, emails, whatever those things are. All right, and I don't know where the data, because they're going to pull the data from the user. All right, I don't know where they're going to put or store or how long they're going to keep that data or what they're going to do with it after the task is completed. And I don't have a level of trust generally. All right.
Well,
Those artifacts, those leftovers are going to be treated the way that they need to be treated. Either they're going to be stored in an encrypted fashion, or they're going to be deleted and
well, that's going to
discarded.
continually be a problem. And we talked about this in the past, why enterprises might not adopt some of this stuff early on
Agreed.
because they have
Agreed.
different, security requirements, encryption requirements,
based on
whatnot.
the data in
But
the
the- but the-
industry
but there's-
and whether or
there's
not
another
they're
problem.
regulated. Yeah.
There's another problem in this that we've touched on a little bit earlier, is that we talked about the fact that some of the teams that used to be sort of providing the bumpers for these things have been reduced, cut, or gotten rid of altogether in these companies. And OpenAI, for example, is not a huge company.
They aren't.
So they probably have limited resources and limited people to even work the problems. So that goes back to what Larry's saying. It's very easy to get overworked. It's very easy to get tired. It's very easy to miss things that they're sometimes obvious in some cases because the expectations are unrealistic for the staff that you have. And again, I've been in that situation myself at work, and I'm sure we all have. So the point is, I think that's a big factor in this as well. We're getting rid of the people that might be babysitting this. So now what happens?
I totally agree.
Where does that leave us?
Right.
So we have other problems. For example,
we do. Speaking of security issues and malware, Poseidon malware is being distributed in Google Ads as well as other places. Chris, what's going on with that?
Yeah. So once again, it's another malware campaign. This was primarily Malwarebytes is the folks that found this particular one. And it's distributed through Google Ads by redirections that are done because they're using fake signing. Well, it's not fake signing. It's Google thinks it's a valid company. And so they distribute it. And the bigger problem isn't that Google distributed it, because other ads have had these problems as well. Google probably more so in this particular case. But the point that's important here is that this is happening more and more. And companies like Google and other ad providers, they don't pull these ads until there's been a complaint from usually the person or the company whose name is being used in the ad. They wait. And I would rather that they pulled it first and then restored it once contacting but it comes down to dollars, right? They're going to keep doing it until the company in question complains and says, hey, somebody's using our name incorrectly or invalidly or whatever. But that's the wrong approach, guys. I'm just saying. And that's kind of what this sort of demonstrates, is that they wait. So in the meantime, all these ads are going out with these fake links, and away you go, and people are getting scammed until this gets pulled. And again, Google's not alone in this. This particular article happened to use an example that was primarily them, but this has happened before, and it'll happen again using all of these ad services. And this approach is wrong because it keeps their money flow coming in, but it doesn't help the consumer who's receiving these ads.
Right. So, long story short, as far as what this thing used to be called, OSX.RodStealer or OSX.
Yeah, this particular one does, yes.
Or just Stealer. It was being called Rod Stealer because of some reference back to the author whose name is Rodrigo IV. This is somebody from somewhere over in the Russian area or Russian republics, simply because most of this is written in Cyrillic. But I guess in a forum post, Rodrigo IV said, and this is translated, hello, everyone. We have released the version 4 update, and there were quite a lot of new things. The very first thing that catches your eye is the name of the project, Poseidon. Why is it that? It's for PR management. In simple words, people didn't know who we were. So they've branded the product with the name Poseidon, just so.
And right now they're acting as a fake Arc browser link.
Yeah,
is what they're doing. So people who are looking for privacy are going to hit this thing,
right,
and get scammed into something that steals data from your password manager. Thank you.
Right. The Arc browser, I guess, is belonging to Coles and Co., linking to the name archost.org. So if you're using anything related to that or anything from arc-download.com, I would probably get rid of it ASAP and run a malware scan on your machine.
Which you should probably be running anyway.
Sure. If you aren't running any kind of a malware scanner on your machine, you should probably be doing it. Yes, there is one built into OS 10 or the latest version of Mac
if
OS.
you would use it, you'd catch all this stuff. People just don't turn
need to
it
make
on.
certain that you're running something. All right.
Please.
we are relying on our computers and our computing devices, whether it's a phone, a tablet, or some kind of a laptop or a desktop, to do a whole lot more. And when you're banking on it, when you're paying people on it, or paying bills on it, or got any financial or private information, if you're doing logging into your healthcare provider to book an appointment or whatever, keep yourself safe. Make certain that you're running some sort of malware scanner on your machine, whether it be PC or Mac.
Let me broadly add to that too. That there used to be this concept that Macs were safer.
Yeah,
I think that's no longer true. As they become more popular, they've certainly become more targeted.
Yep,
it's all a matter of visibility and popularity.
Agree.
There you go.
Agree.
You're not safe if you're on a Mac, guys.
Right. We will be also featuring a tip this week related to this particular concern. So there you go.
Awesome.
I do want to go ahead and move us to our last story here in the mobile Linux segment before we take a break. And there's some interesting things going on with in the Google Pixel realm and world. The Tensor 5, is it a reason to skip Pixel 9 and wait for Pixel 10? Joel, what do you think?
Okay, so the big deal with this is that the TSMC, who is one of the major semiconductor companies, are the ones making the core for the Tensor G5, which they're thinking it's going to be a 3 nanometer process.
Okay.
And that it will be faster than the one, I think the current the G4, which will probably be the one in the Pixel 9 series, will be still what I think it's what Samsung, right, Chris?
I think.
I think you're right.
So my thing is the story says is it enough to make you wait until the 10 comes out? It isn't, not for me. I think if you need a new
Buy that
phone,
new
get
phone.
it. If you have a 6 or 6 Pro, go ahead, get the 9 Pro or whatever you're gonna get, because I'm not fully convinced that I'm gonna be a 9 Pro or 9 Pro XL or whatever the new name's gonna be.
And you're coming from a
You
6, right?
6 Pro. Yeah.
6 Pro.
So,
so
the 6
and-
Pros due this fall to get the last major OS
Thank you,
update,
because
by
I
the
was
way.
just wanting to make certain that everybody knew that Android 15 was going to be the final major update for most everybody that was running or still running a Google Pixel 6 or 6 Pro. So
Yep.
need to keep that in mind. No more updates. You won't get an update
So-
next year. You'll get an update this year.
Broadly, guys, I know that both Samsung and Google are coming out with their device releases in the couple upcoming weeks. Do we know roughly when what those dates were at this point? Because that's what this 9 coming is going to be in the coming weeks.
I saw some leaks for the Fold 6, and the Pixel series has been leaking like crazy.
Yeah, true.
I think the Pixel will come out earlier this year than it has typically.
It has.
That's
I just
what
don't
they're
remember.
saying.
I could have sworn that Samsung's in the next week or so, and then Google's sometime in August, if I remember correctly.
August or September is what I would think.
but earlier than usual. But definitely earlier
Yeah.
than usual.
Right. 'Cause
Okay,
they're usually
soon.
September, October timeframe, and now they're
Right.
pushing up a month.
I think
or
they
two.
want to be Apple to the punch.
Exactly.
I think.
And I don't blame them. They should. Why not? They're ready. Why not?
Right.
Mhm.
So, well, we'll see. There's this is the same question that a lot of folks ask. Which Mac should I buy? It's the same question. Which version of the Pixel should I buy? Should I wait for the next version, or should I go with the version that's coming out this year?
You're always going to have that question, though.
You're always going to You're always going to have that question. And
If you have a need, get
only-
the new one.
the only
Get the
thing that
latest
I can
greatest.
say is make your
I agree.
choice. If you like that particular line or model of hardware, buy what you can afford to buy as much as you can afford to buy, and then be happy with your purchase. Don't sit around a year from now and be sitting here going, I should have waited. You don't necessarily know what's going to happen a year from now. You don't know what you're going to get. It's like a box of chocolates, Forrest. You don't know what you're going to get.
The other way to do that is just buy a new phone every year. You don't have to worry
Well,
about
thank you, Dr. Mr. McJunkin.
No,
was that
I don't
Mr. Was that
recommend
Mr.
that.
Moneybags?
Yes.
And I will
Dr.
say
Mr.
this.
Moneybags.
It's why I don't have any money.
And I think people are starting to do this naturally, but look at your current phone, and does it still do exactly what you want to do? Technically, mine does. But because I'm a nerd, I'm gonna go get a new one, probably. Yeah.
Mhm.
Do I really need a new phone? Probably not. I'm very happy still with my Pixel 6
Right.
Pro.
Right.
We went through this last year with my brother. He was on, God help us, he was on an iPhone 6.
Oh, shut up.
And the
Oh, man.
only reason he decided to finally jump was it had become very slow, of course, over the years.
Sure.
But more importantly, they were no longer going to support he wasn't going to get new updates. He wasn't getting the same things anymore. So
Sure.
he finally decided and made the jump to a 14. After all of that, this is just before the 15s came
8
out.
generations.
And he said at that
Right.
time, he made the same question: do I wait for the next one? And I said, no, you didn't even
Get it.
use the one you had, into the ground. Why don't you
Mhm.
just, So the point is, Joel, I think you're right. I think people have gotten to that. You got to make that decision. Is it doing what you want it to do? And he had said yes, yes, yes for year after year. And I think more people are making those decisions and saying, I'm good.
Yeah. And that's why things like why you're seeing some stale statistics not being as high as they have been in the past.
True. I think you're right.
Because people
Yep.
are doing that.
Yep. Exactly.
I agree.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So
I mean,
I'm
I'd
gonna-
love a new
not-
phone
but
every
not us.
18 months.
We're crazy.
Yes. Yeah. Don't do what we
Absolutely
do. But
Don't do
So-
what we do.
No, don't. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move us to our Windows segment, but I'm going to do that right after this brief message. Hi, this is Christopher Spera with iTechGear.org, and I'm here to tell you that iTechGear.org and the iTechGear Weekly are on Patreon. Patreon is a platform for creators, allowing them to express their creative side in an organized, marketable fashion and earn a living or create a really cool kind of side hustle. You can create a community around your hobby of choice. You can gain followers. You can get members and supporters all along the way. You can create subscription products that, for a pledged amount every month, you'll provide to your members and followers. Setup is easy, prices are reasonable, and you can have your pledges auto deposited into an account of your choice every month. With iTechGear.org, our initial offering is a monthly newsletter for just $3 a month. This is our initial offering, and we'll have other tiers and other products and other offers up in the coming months. Become a patron of our site. Grow with us, and we'll provide you with the tech understanding that you're missing right now. Join us on Patreon at www.patreon.com/iTechGear. That's www.patreon.com/iTechGear. And welcome back. This is the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 97. One of my favorite here, hold my beer moments. And I want to move us into our Windows segment. There's some interesting things that are going on here. And as we mentioned earlier, with Mac OS, leaving certain features from Intel Macs behind, this kind of sort of ties into it all, in that Intel needs to find a Qualcomm killer soon, or it's going to be game over for x86, x64. This, I believe, is coming from our good friend and neighbor over at ZDNet, Mr. Ed Bott. The long and the short of it, and it's very, very simple here. Intel has to find something that can compete in terms of power and in terms of and when I say power, I mean computing power, as well as power consumption and battery life. Otherwise, it's going to have a problem.
Let's make sure that people understand. So what's happening in the Windows space, and we've talked about this before, but let's repeat it because it doesn't hurt to summarize it up for
Absolutely,
folks.
it doesn't.
That what has happened is they finally have released a mainstream computer based on ARM chips, which Apple did a few years ago when they introduced the M series. They got rid of Intel and replaced it with the M series.
Sure.
This is now happening in the Windows space. There are ARM machines out there, and they're getting very good reviews.
Right.
Whether
those
people
with the
will uptake
Snapdragon
on them,
X or X Elite,
right.
we talked about that a week or two ago.
And so the point we're getting at is that now what has to happen is people are liking it. The reviews are coming back pretty good on the whole. There's some gotchas you gotta work through. Those will smoothen out as time goes on, I'm sure. But the point is, the momentum is starting to be there for them, and if it continues to be there for them, Intel needs to be thinking about it, because as we said earlier, all these things take power, all these things draw power, all these things. You're seeing it in the server space too, by the way, guys. You're seeing ARM chips starting to be released in servers, not just these. So the point is, if Intel can't respond to this and AMD can't respond to this, they're going to get left behind. They've got to do something.
They do.
That's the summary.
They do. The biggest issue here that you're going to have with laptops and consumer-based portables and maybe even desktops, like you said, is that they are much more efficient. They draw and use less power. They also don't run as hot. All right.
Right.
There is a huge difference between my Intel Windows machines
Yeah.
in terms of temperature and whatnot when you either pick up or put it on your lap or move it or whatever. It's hot. It's hot to the touch. Those that are ARM based are much cooler. They don't feel as warm or as hot. So they obviously we don't want to turn on a light bulb and give it its wings or have it stay on forever. We want to be able to go ahead and have these things work out in such a way that you've got all of the features on that ARM platform, including that neural engine to run your AI based features. All right. Intel and AMD don't have that quite yet. All right.
No, they're not quite there yet. They're working on it supposedly, but they're not there yet.
And I think to simplify this for some of our
go ahead.
listeners, ARM uses an RISC process that actually has more simple instructions to do the same thing. And when you have fewer instructions by the millions, I'm saying, you're going to have less heat, less power consumption. It just makes sense. It's the way to go.
Agreed. And the long and the short of it is both of those companies, Intel and ARM, but more so Intel, because I think they're a little bit bigger and they're affected a little bit more. They need to come up with something. They're working on it. They need to perfect it. They need to get it to market as quickly as they can without creating any of those wonderful security holes that we were talking about.
But here's the thing, that the warning shot was fired when Apple released the M series chips to desktops. That was the warning shot, and laptops. And Intel, if they didn't jump on the bandwagon then, should have.
True.
And they may have, guys. I don't want to say that they did. They may well have. They were keeping quiet about it though, which may also
they have been very quiet about it. I mean, because that happened in 2020, 2021, right? Somewhere in that time frame, right?
It was a few years back now, yeah. So,
all right, so 2020, 2021, I mean, that we would have heard it. I believe the first M1 based machines came out either in 2020 or in 2021. The old About This Mac over here, it says 2021. All right. And this is an M1 Max based
the Max wasn't the first one. The Max came out later, so
right. Well, it came out not but not a whole year.
The original M1 came out earlier than that. Yeah, you're right.
It did, and I think it was earlier in 21.
November. It came out November 2020.
Okay, I was going to say if not early 21, then late 20. All right. So there's been some time on it. They've had time to look at this. They've had time to play with this, and if they aren't actually doing anything about it or with it, then they may have some issues and problems. In fact, all right,
especially if these do take off, and it looks like
and it looks like they
will.
are, because Windows Surface PCs, whether they're laptops or specific Surface devices, all right, those are mostly being beaten at this point by the MacBook Air, but not necessarily the MacBook Pro. Right. So there's some competition.
Well, and we talked about this a little bit. Was it last week or week before last? We talked about the performance hits on these different chips. Right. And I think the thing that's again, we were quoting an article this week that makes, it doesn't mostly beat the MacBook Pro. It does meet the MacBook Air. But keep in mind, that's generally when you look at multi-core processor usage. When you look at single core processor, even the M1s and M2, the M2s and M3s tend to do better. In single core. It's just that there's more cores in these Qualcomm chips. That's all. Sure. That's what it comes down to. So they do better in multi-core, but they don't when you start going up to the higher end MacBook Pros, especially and whatnot, the Pros and the Maxes and all those chips, because those have more cores, so they tend to win. So that's kind of generically what this is talking about. But again, these comparisons we're going to see more and more of these comparisons, guys. You got to be real careful about watching benchmarks, because they only tell part of the story,
Right.
And there's other layers. Like, for example, on a Mac, you still have to occasionally translate Intel based apps that are still hanging around after a number of years And the Mac does a very good and efficient job of doing that with Rosetta. Rosetta 2, I should say. It does a very good job with that. On the Windows platform, I apologize. Off the top of my head, I forgot what Microsoft calls their translation engine. It's pretty good, but there's still about arguably 10 to 20% hit.
I would say
I've heard people, and I've heard people say
depending
on the app, it can be worse or better a little bit than those ranges.
And how many of them you're running at the same time?
Well, and there's still some challenges with drivers, and there's still some challenges with games or anything that used any kind of digital rights management. Those things still are problematic, and they will be for a while. They'll get better. But the point is, you're going to watch these comparisons, but you're going to watch the Windows numbers get better as time goes on. They'll get more efficient. They'll get better. Chris, you and I both had a previous generation ARM chip in a Windows, and we have already seen in the last couple of years those devices have improved dramatically as Windows has improved.
And
amazingly, yes.
Just software, software wise.
2029, we're going to see 50% of all PCs rolling off the assembly lines as ARMs.
Absolutely.
I am not surprised to see that, because
I didn't make that up. That's a fact.
But what I see different now with this ARM rollout that we didn't see with previous ARM rollout, because ARM rollouts have been going on for a few years now on Windows, and with fits and starts, to say the least. Some good, some bad. But the point I'm getting at is the difference I'm seeing this time is, as I see the advertisements for them, and I am seeing advertisements more than I used to. I'm seeing advertisements for these devices. They're not being branded as ARM devices, for one thing. They're being branded as Copilot, Copilot Plus devices. But more importantly, they're being marketed as Windows computers.
Right.
Nothing else.
Right. It doesn't
with
matter
no other moniker on them.
Right. The Intel Inside moniker, if you will, isn't necessarily as big of
a thing. It isn't a thing anymore. It's all being just pushed as, okay, here's the latest Windows computer.
Right.
Move on. They're not differentiating. Whereas last time around and time before, they were differentiating.
Absolutely.
Now they're not.
I cannot see Intel and AMD taking this line down. This is an existential threat.
Absolutely is.
Oh, it's a threat to their
direct.
They have to be working hard. We just don't know it.
Right.
I think so too. I think that's what it is. I think the reason we're not hearing anything is because they're working hard on it. Right, is really what it comes down to. They're just keeping it close to the best.
It would be nice, and if their PR departments are worth their weight in people, all right, it would be smart for them to start beating that PR drum.
But they have to have something to beat it with first. They've got to have something they can
but
show.
There needs to be some level of coming attraction sort of trailer.
Not until they have a number or something that they can show.
You can't do that in marketing, Chris. You cannot do it. You can't be Norelco and say, we're going to come out in 3 years with a new razor that'll blow everything away. Nobody cares. 3 months. 3 months they'll care.
Now, if you, however, could come out and say, we're going to be coming out with this new razor that's going to blow everyone away, and here's why, and give you a reason to wait for it. That's different.
And that's what I'm saying they need.
I don't think they have that yet.
That's what I'm saying they need to get to.
I don't think they're far enough along. Yeah, I don't think they're ready for that.
Then in my opinion, they're gonna have a huge late to the party sort of.
I think they already do.
I think they waited a little too long.
I do too.
A huge. Oh yeah.
And by the way, folks, I will tell you right now, I said this when the M1 chips came out from Apple.
Yeah,
Intel's already late to the game. I said this back then. I said this is going to be a problem for them, and I said they just haven't figured it out yet.
No. I mean, Intel was having trouble getting past 5 nanometers. All right,
and that was where they were focused, was trying to fix their chip die problem that they had. And I think they were just so busy worrying about that. And I remember saying at the time, their chips are generating too much heat and they're sucking too much power. And the only way they're comparing with the M series chips is to throw more power at the problem. It's not the answer to their problem. They've got to come up with something different.
You and I discussed that
several years ago.
Yes.
So here we are several years down the road. And guess what, kids? Intel still not got their act together.
No.
Or if they do, they're not telling us.
Absolutely true. And if they don't get it together quickly, they're going to be in for a world of hurt.
But maybe later
just look at gaming machines, man. You can literally go into Micro Center today and buy a gaming machine that has water cooling.
Right? Why should
Apple try that? Yeah, and that's in a lot of cases because you have to. Yeah, and you have gamers that are overclocking their chips. and all that because they need more power, and that's the what is driving Intel to do this, which I don't understand it. I mean,
Well, but the funny thing is because the ARM chips are more efficient, if they would come up with an ARM chip that threw more energy at GPU,
right?
you know, they could counter that very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
They really could.
Mm-hmm.
But they aren't going to do that. And they could counter some of the power draw issues and the need for
Mhm.
extra cooling and on and on and on, or at least improve it. At least improve it.
Right.
And right now, it doesn't look like they're
Well,
doing
you
that. Now,
would
maybe
you
they
would
will.
also think that AMD, who has a really huge relationship with NVIDIA, who is a graphics card
Well, they compete.
maker.
They compete.
Well, they do. All right. And with the AMD has their own graphics cards.
Yeah.
You would think though that they would do something to make better
I would think
use
AMD
of,
would
that
do
there
it,
would be
or surprisingly enough, I would be surprised if NVIDIA didn't do something
sure
or get in bed with
there's been
somebody on
rumors
it.
there's been rumors of NVIDIA coming out with a CPU
There has been
for a while,
So
um,
this
to
could change
be
a
a
lot in
direct
the next
competitor.
year or two. I mean, I think it's going to be very telling to see how everybody responds to what Qualcomm and Snapdragon have now done.
Absolutely.
It's going to be very interesting to see how they respond because they're going to have to respond in some way.
Something here's something that will blow you away. This is a current quote from Intel.
Okay.
We take all our competition seriously, but we think our history is our guide, and we do not see ARM as being all that potentially dangerous at this moment. Right, that was 4 months ago from Intel.
4 months ago?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's dumb.
yeah.
That is stupid. Come on.
Yeah,
I mean, I know this guy makes a lot more money than I do. Come on.
Alas,
I mean,
poor
look how
Yorick.
popular. Yeah,
I knew.
but look
him
how
for HBO.
popular. But beyond the Copilot PCs that we're talking about here, look how popular small board computers have gotten, like the Raspberry Pi
Yes.
and other things of that nature.
Yes.
I've got my Raspberry Pi 5 8 gigabytes sitting over at my desk, and I also have a Surface Pro running an Intel Core i7 Surface Pro 6.
Mm-hmm.
Guess which one I use more? It's not the Surface
Pi.
Pro
No,
anymore.
and let's face and going back to what
Yep.
Larry said, again, Intel uses what we call CISC instruction sets, whereas ARM uses RISC, which is reduced instruction. It's a reduced instruction set, a small instruction. So guess what happens to apps when you do that? They get smaller. They get more efficient on all sorts of levels. And they're simpler. So sometimes you have to build more complex routines at times.
This
But the
makes
point
the
I'm getting at is
developers have to work a little harder to do that.
they do, but at the end of the day, you end up with better code.
You do.
Really do.
Absolutely.
And so
You do.
it'd be nice to see, Intel not respond with the same old. I want to see them respond with,
Agreed.
I don't need an i11 chip. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I don't.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Correct. I would love to see something from Intel in the ARM-based area, but we'll have to
They
wait
could
and
do
see.
it.
It doesn't have to be ARM. It could be their own thing. They can reinvent,
but
fix
it's
the
gotta be-
problem.
But it's got to be
Although-
competitive, right? It's
Yeah,
got to have
although
that
if they come up
neural
with their
engine.
own-
It's got to
If
have.
they come up with their own thing, they've got to be in bed with Microsoft or somebody to make it happen correctly. And you haven't
Or
heard
just
anything from
fix-
Microsoft leading there.
Correct.
Or fix Intel. Fix the x86. I mean, there's no
Yeah.
reason they can't make it use less power.
Well,
Well-
except the fact that it's CISC based, and that's going to be hard to get around.
It
You know,
is.
short of-
It is.
short
And
of
I think
re-architecting
that's
it from
where
ground up, it's
probably where
hard.
they've been spending the most time lately is trying to solve that, trying to crack that egg right there, Joel. I have a feeling that's
Right.
where they've spent most of their time and their energy. And I believe that the more time and energy and the more that they invest into that particular effort is going to take them out of the market.
I think it's a dead end because it always
Absolutely.
generates more heat, more power, more anything, and it's going to keep doing that. It's the nature of the architecture. So
Mhm.
short of re-architecting, I don't see them getting around it. But you know what? I'm not a chip engineer, so
Neither am I. Neither
there
am
are
I, and I
people who are
didn't-
better, way smarter at that than I am. So maybe I know Intel has those people working for them. Whether or
Right.
not they're working on this is the question. They should be.
True. They should be. They doing something. Anyway, I want to go ahead and I want to move us on. We've got some Microsoft specific related stories here that I want to go ahead and get to. As an example, Microsoft is quietly reversing some forced OneDrive folder backups in Windows 11. And Chris, you've been talking about Windows backup and your concerns with forcing folks to jump onto OneDrive and using
this is a slightly different piece of it. So and this was based around an opinion piece from Paul Thurrott, who has been around for years in especially in the Windows space.
Absolutely.
He's focusing on OneDrive, the OneDrive side of it, as opposed to the backup utility side of it. My complaint has been that the backup utility forces you to OneDrive. And what he's been saying for a while now is that OneDrive, in terms of syncing your data, forces you into that sync, even if you choose not to do it. They kind of do it behind the scenes on you. Even when you've said no several times,
right.
they will turn it on for you. You can turn it off. There isn't anything stop, but you may have to turn it off multiple times in order to get it to stay off.
Sure.
I've seen on my own Surface device that it did go on, and I did turn it off, and it has stayed off for the most part. But what he's saying now is he thinks that they're backing down on some of this, or at least a little bit, and that they're not triggering it quite as aggressively as they were. I guess is the way he's kind of looking at it.
Well,
but wait a minute. There's another piece of this that's hard. When it does the sync, when it first sets up the sync and forces the sync, it moves, so it'll take things that are in your quote unquote desktop folder, your documents folder, and some of those other, and your downloads, your related folders, right? Those standard folders that we have on all Windows computers, and it copies them to sort of a OneDrive subdirectory equivalent, and then synchronizes from there. So all of a sudden, your default stuff no longer points at those default document folders. It points out to which, by the way, creates problems for apps that do want to go to those direct folders and are not known to go to the OneDrive folders. It's a whole nother problem. But if you stop it and tell it to stop the syncing, it doesn't put it'll when you first turn it on, it'll move your files to this other location. It won't move them back if you turn it off. You have to manually know where to go to find those files and move them back, and that's part of the problem.
So explain to me, because I'm here a little stupid about this particular situation.
I wasn't going to say that.
Well, but you wanted to. And but the question that I have here is, how does this differ? If you're already a OneDrive user, all right, and you're syncing you're saving your data to OneDrive on your machine, and it syncs up to OneDrive in the cloud. How is this different than that? How
simple. In one case, you made the decision to do that and to make that synchronization happen. In the other case, it was shoved down your throat. You weren't asked about it. They just did it and turned it on without telling you.
They just moved away from documents with the historical My Documents folder into OneDrive documents. Okay. That's this. I wanted to make because again,
if you choose to do that, that's fine. And that's what it will do. That's no question.
But the question is, OneDrive has been part of Windows for decades. Well, literally, in some way, shape, or form. In some way, shape, or form, it's been part of Windows for decades.
But it didn't used to take your default folders and move them onto the OneDrive folder and do it for you. It had a OneDrive folder that you manually put stuff in if you wanted it synchronized. They stopped doing that and started forcing these pseudo automatic things on you. And automatically moving your files and automatically moving your default directories around for you. So your put them into that synchronization.
Your pictures folder is now part of OneDrive. Your documents or My Documents folder is now part of OneDrive.
And your desktop folder is part of OneDrive.
Your desktop folder is if you actually go into your OneDrive folder, you will see a folder there called desktop. And if you were to put a file in that folder in File Manager, it'll automatically show up on your desktop, etc.
But more than that, there's another layer to that. If you use Office 365 apps, they automatically go to those locations and you have to turn it off there too.
Yep.
Right.
And irks me.
It's a pain. It's a pain in the butt that they've done it in all these layers to you without asking you.
And conversely, Apple has always asked your permission. I mean, they just offer desktop and document storage in iCloud. They never ever turned it on. They didn't even ask. They just
So
gave
the
it the
issue here
opportunity.
is not that they've re-engineered OneDrive in any way, shape, or form. They're just using their infrastructure, and they're forcing you to use that infrastructure as your default folders for Windows.
And I hate to use the word force. They're turning it on without your knowledge. And,
like I said, they're forcing you.
But you can turn it off. If they were just forcing you, you wouldn't be able to turn it off.
But they're not moving it back to the historical folders of favorites that you've had before. And
you have to have a little bit of knowledge about what they did in order to undo it if you don't want it.
Sure.
And I've run into this with my work PC because they forced me to the corporate OneDrives, and I didn't want to do that by default.
Which is not the same.
I've learned,
just not the same animal entirely. It's actually SharePoint. But that's a different story.
And I've gone through a lot of hoops, but the pointers on your desktop are the same, and it's the same problem. Yeah. And it's the same tools being used to synchronize it up to SharePoint. Sure. SharePoint's just, even if you use personal OneDrive, the back end is still kind of SharePoint. It's still the same engines under the hood. The point I'm getting at is that you have to sort of figure this out, how to undo this. There are things out on the internet that will help you see these things, find these things, undo these things. But why should we have to? Shouldn't we, yes, they ask you, but sometimes they ignore what you've asked. So why are they doing that? Why is Tharad has an interesting term that I won't repeat here on the podcast, but if you read
it is
the
an
article,
interesting word though, isn't it?
He has an interesting term for this that some people take offense to, and I understand why. But let's just say it refers to adding crap and choices, automated things that you didn't ask for, including advertisements to windows that you didn't want and didn't ask for.
And nobody would want or would ask for in their right mind, because why would you use an operating system on a computer as an advertising platform? Why?
Well, that's what Android was built on, though. That was the main reason Google bought the Android in the first place, was to deliver another tool for their advertising platform. It's reasonable to do if that's what you set as your original goal.
But you're not getting ads. But you're not getting ads on your phone directly in the operating system.
No, but it was used to collect data.
And Microsoft is doing that right now.
It's the opposite side.
It's getting worse and worse.
Absolutely. It is getting worse and worse.
And that's part of this blankification process that he's.
Yeah.
All right.
But in this case, what he's talking about is they actually backed down on one of those things quietly without really announcing that they backed it down.
Right.
They didn't back down the whole thing. They didn't stop doing it overall, but they're doing it a little bit less aggressive, a tiny bit fractionally less aggressive. So there you go.
Right. So the last thing that I want to go ahead and get to in the Windows segment, and I think this is an interesting thing, and it may actually create ripples in additional states. But Microsoft has agreed to a $14 million fine in the state of California for a discrimination settlement. Joel, what's happening here with this one?
Okay. So basically anyone who's taken protected leave, like family, medical leave or anything like that, has been seen differently when it comes to promotions, rewards, and things of that nature, which is just not allowed, not just in California law, but in federal law, is my thoughts.
Right.
But it's like, and Microsoft, this is no sweat for Microsoft to pay it, but I just can't help feel, but this is going to get bigger.
Well, I agree.
Yeah, I think you're right.
The issue here is that practices by Microsoft, all right, in the state of California have violated a state law, which is California's Fair Employment and Housing Act, as well as the federal-based Americans with Disabilities Act. If you had taken any kind of paid or any kind of family style leave, like for pregnancy reasons, you took your FMLA, or if you went ahead and had to take time off to care for a parent or a loved one, These are things that are supposed to be protected by federal as well as in California, the state law. And the company cannot say no. B, they must save your job for you. They cannot, because you could be gone for 3-4 months or longer, depending on the need of your family, and they have to hold your job for you as long as you are complying with this particular leave act, in order to be out of work. And Microsoft was discriminating against those folks that had taken those particular leaves, that when it came to promotions or raises or bonuses, they were cutting you short because you weren't there. And so Microsoft has finally agreed to pay a $14 million fine, out of which the claimants in a investigation that started back in 2020 will be paid from. Now, since this is in violation with the Americans with Disabilities Act, I believe,
and the California law,
right? Well, because it is in violation of the ADA, I do believe that there is at least the impetus to have this come and have suits brought from other states where Microsoft has offices and employees, and where this practice, because it's not going to be just those folks in California that have this problem.
No, they'll have to do it in federal court, so it's a different animal.
It's going to be probably company wide that this is being experienced. And therefore, there are probably going to be claimants from other states that are going to pop in and say, yeah, me too. Yeah, me too. And they're going to have at least this particular decision, because it does cite the ADA, to fall back on as precedent, and then have a trial in that other particular state or states where there are additional claimants that are bringing suit. So I think Microsoft has got itself in a situation where they're going to wish that they weren't guilty of this particular issue, because I have a feeling it's going to cost them much more than just $14 million for the state of California. I think they're going to see this probably in a number of other states as well.
We'll see where it goes. I certainly don't disagree with you.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. All right. But I believe that Microsoft has bitten off a bit more than they want to be able to chew here. So we'll see. We'll have to wait and see. Anyway, so that is the end of our Windows segment, and I want to move us to our tip of the week segment. I want to remind everybody that iTechGear was founded on the intent of making technology easy for everyone to understand, and this team specifically is dedicated most of their writing careers to that particular purpose. And every week, the iTechGear Weekly is going to feature a new computing tip authored by one of our 4 experienced editors. Questions, requests, suggestions, etc., can be sent to tips@itechgear.org. And because of the things, and I alluded to this earlier, but because of some of the things that we were talking about, I'm going to have us reuse one of Larry's very, very important tips. It's already on iTechGear.org, but it's really important. Larry, do you want to speak to this, or did you want me to go ahead and do it?
No, go right ahead.
Oh, awesome. So this week, our tip is about using strong passwords and or passkeys. Keeping your personal information safe is probably one of the most important things that you can do while you are computing. And if you're logging into a banking site, if you're logging into a healthcare site, if you're logging into any site where you're going to have payment information or personal information like your name, address, phone number, date of birth, anything that might be usable by a bad actor to impersonate you, you're going to need to secure that information on that site with a strong password. Now, these are things that are going to probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of a minimum of 12 to 14 characters and maybe a maximum of 20, 25 characters, upper and lower case, letters, numbers, special characters. That's going to be anything on the number row of your keyboard that may be used with a shift key, which is going to be like the exclamation point, at sign, pound sign or number sign, the dollar sign, percent sign, caret, ampersand, asterisk, or one of the open close parens, an underscore or a dash. You're going to want to have a password, a long password that's at least that long. Like I said, anywhere between 12 to 14 characters minimum to probably 20, 25 characters max, somewhere in that area. Or you're going to want something, maybe a pass phrase, a simple sentence. All right. That uses upper and lower cases and substitutes some letters or inserts some numbers here and there, maybe a punctuation mark or two. Just a simple sentence. This is an example of a decent passphrase. And then substitute some of those for upper and lower case, mix it up. So substitute, throw in some numbers anywhere, maybe in between the words or at the end of the words or at the beginning of the words, however you want. Some punctuation marks, etc. Take all of take your it doesn't matter what it is, just a bunch of words: apple, goat, pineapple, computer, comma, bunch of nonsense words that don't make any sense. Throw those together. Something that's going to be long enough that has numbers, letters, and a mix of characters in there that isn't easily discernible. I mean, it's going to be the difference between somebody finding, you use password 123 or 1234, and I can guarantee you're probably going to lose the $7 million or seven figure income that you've got stashed away in your account. As you were mentioning, Larry, the other week about your friend who may have some issues or concerns with password 1234.
Let me give you a real quick example that maybe folks can relate to. If you will do 18 characters, just 18, at least one uppercase, one lowercase, at least one number and one special character, preferably more. But if you use those minimums, you're looking at 181 years to crack that password. That's pretty good for a random.
That's pretty darn safe. That's pretty.
I think I've said this. I think I've said this before, but the IRS sets guidelines of what you should use for security, and I believe their current minimum is 14 characters, including special characters, numbers,
right, and that's plenty.
Lower.
That's plenty.
But the point I'm getting at is that, guys, if you're going even lower than that and have been doing it, and you used to be, we said 8, and then we said 12. Go higher. It doesn't hurt you to go higher. As Larry said, it's many, many years if you go 18 characters. That's not unreasonable. It really isn't.
Nope. And
toward what Chris just said, if you'll pick those words for a passphrase, they can be much more memorable than a randomly generated password. And literally, it's just as good. 3 words, at least 8 characters in the word, or 8 letters, but make them words that don't make sense. I don't know,
right?
Longerility, or just plikeness, or just stuff that makes no sense, but they're not words, but they are words you can remember.
Right. Make it something memorable, but long enough that it's not going to be easy to guess.
And then you're up into the hundreds and hundreds of years to crack them.
Right.
But people still just won't do it. They won't do it. I don't care.
Right. In order to remember those things, in order to make certain that you don't forget them, because they should not be the same password every single time you have a login. A password manager is a fabulous thing, like 1Password. All right. LastPass.
Maybe not.
All right. Right. Maybe not. Or
Bitwarden's a great one.
Dashlane or something.
Bitwarden is a free and open source
Bitwarden,
password
great
manager
choice.
that's awesome. Just great.
Yep.
Great
I would
choice.
like to see some better tools for moving those from machine to machine when you need to do that. But other than that, you're absolutely right.
You need
Yeah.
something, kids. Right.
You need something.
LastPass not, but you know, pick something. I've been using 1Password for years and years and years.
1818. I was one of their
Right.
first customers.
Right. And they're an old WUGNET partner, as I recall. All right. And but they have an absolutely fabulous product. It can be used either as an application or as a browser extension or both. All right. And it will autofill your logins for you. But there's a whole bunch of benefits to using these things. But the point is, it will keep track of all of them. And all you have to remember is that one master password that you use to log into
The best password manager is the one you're using, period.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true. And guys,
pick one.
If you're on any of the Apple platforms, use the built-in password one that they've got now.
It's very good.
Use one. It's not bad at all, and
right.
It's there and it's free for you. So, again, like you said, Larry, the best one's the one you're actually using.
Use MFA. Use MFA. Use
multi-factor authentication.
Yes, thank you.
Right?
Absolutely true.
There's a Google authenticator that used to be out there. There is a Microsoft authenticator that's out there.
Duo is a big one in the market. There's a lot of big players in the market.
Find one, pick one, and use it. Find a password manager, pick it and use it. All right. You're going to want to have something like this. And again, if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you don't understand how to get started, don't worry about it. Tips at iTechGear.org will get you help.
And like Chris Gavula said, if you're an Apple user, even the current one, the new one in iOS 18 and Sequoia is better. Yep. But even the current one actually takes care of multi-factor authentication as well, automatically.
Absolutely, it does.
So you get two birds with one stone there.
So perfect. Jump on something, but use one.
Do it.
All right? Because you're going to wish at some point in your life, you're probably going to wish you did.
As Joel says, someday it will happen to you, and he's
absolutely.
Right.
It's not a matter of if. It's not a matter of if anymore. It's a matter of when.
Yep.
All right, so I want to go ahead then and move us to our pick of the week segment, and I want to take a moment to remind everybody and make certain that everybody knows that our show picks are typically hardware, software, and other items of interest that we have individually purchased and actually use and actually like enough that we want to recommend them to you, our growing listener base. These aren't paid advertisements or anything that we have an affiliated marketing relationship with. If they were, the editorial policy at iTechGear.org says we have to disclose that up front before we tell you what the pick is. These are just things that we sincerely believe in. And we want to bring them to you at the end of each show. Why?
Because we like you.
There you go. All right, kids. So, Joel, you've got the pick this week, and what do we got?
All right. Well, as everyone probably knows, I've been talking about preparing for this hike. So one of the things I've been doing is picking up gear and stuff that I think might be useful on this 20-mile trek that I'm going to do through the Southern Ohio woods. One of the things that I've always used, usually in the past when I was a kid, it was just a stick, is some sort of walking stick. We're, of course, moving up in the world now, and you can literally buy what they call trekking poles. The ones I am talking about today are the Cascade Mountain Tech lightweight trekking poles. They're made by Cascade Mountain. They are aircraft grade aluminum, very strong. I have no doubt that these will be fine on this hike. Now, if you're looking for something that's going to last through a hike on the AT, these may not be the ones for you. But yeah, because they make other ones out of carbon fiber, which are extremely lightweight. They also make ones that are very set up to deploy similarly to like a blind person's cane, where you can basically just whip it out and it automatically deploys, and kind of.
Nice.
This isn't that. This has two clasps. It has one on the bottom, one on the top, and they do hold pretty well. And they're very, very handy, especially in your trail. I did a trail here Friday called Rocks and Roots, and yeah, there's plenty of rocks and roots on that trail. But there was also some stream crossings, and these helped me from literally falling into the stream as I'm trying to get down off of the creek side and into the creek to cross it. Yeah, so these ones come. They have I believe the tips are carbide on them. They also come with rubber tips to you can put on them, like if you're using them on concrete or something like that. If I'm in the mud, I'm taking the rubber tips off. But they also come with baskets for snow and mud baskets, as well as tips that kind of look like a little bit like a boot, which is great for like if you're on gravel or something like that. And a carrying case, which is very nice. I have the orange one. They work very well, and they're only $25, $24.99.
And you get a pair of those for that price.
You get a pair of them, correct?
So there's two poles with 2 feet, 2 snow tips, 2.
A lot of great reviews on these things too.
Yep. And one of the best parts about like these, a lot of the grips are some of the grips are PVA or EVA. This one has an EVA lower grip, but the main grip that you're gonna use the most of the time is made out of cork, and that's lets you still be able to grip it if your hands are sweating, and it's much more comfortable to use cork, in my opinion. That's just my personal opinion. But this is going to be the first of many devices and gear that I'm using for this hike that I'm going to start talking about when it's my turn for a tip of the week. An upcoming one is going to be a new Garmin 7X or Phoenix 7X smartwatch I'm getting, which is a outdoors focused smartwatch.
Nice.
So we'll be talking about that and bringing that as a later tip and reviewing that on iTechGear.org.
That's fabulous. We will be looking for that. So
yes.
I took a look at it. You and I have been sort of chatting back and forth a little bit about that. Not much, but just a little bit. And I took a look at those watches, and those are actually pretty nice. So that particular watch, nice big screen, nice, but we'll be looking forward to your review once you kind of get it into in-house
and take it on the hike.
There you go. Good stuff. All right. Well, that is cool. A nice little set of hiking poles for a very reasonable price. Very nice. All right, kids. Well, that's actually it for this week. This has been the iTechGear Weekly, episode number 97. One of my favorite here, Hold My Beer moments. Recorded live Sunday, July 7th, 2024, live from iTechGear.central. As I have said and before, for Mr. Chris Gavula, Brother Joe McLaughlin, and Dr. Mr. Larry McJunkin, this is Christopher Spera saying we will see you next time.